Hi boys and girls, I am going to do a video for you today to go with your language lesson. It is language lesson number 147, which is page 277 in your book. And this is a new section of this chapter. I think it's going to be really familiar to you actually, but I just wanted to go over it with you since we haven't talked about it in quite a long time. So if you want to get out your book and turn to page 277, I'm going to read through the top real quickly with you. And if you haven't already highlighted this section, you may want to get your highlighter too to highlight these names for the 4 types of sentences we learned about earlier this year. On page 277 at the top, in the first box there, it talks about a telling sentence. And this is a sentence that gives information. And the word that we want to remember now is not that it's just called a telling sentence, but that it is a declarative sentence. And I know we talked about that again earlier this school year, so hopefully you have been able to remember that. And I like to remember this by the idea of being declarative means somebody is declaring something. They're giving you information, they're telling you something. And this kind of sentence ends with a period. And I'm going to go ahead and look at sentence number 1 on the board. You'll see up here this number 1 is from your workbook, page 277. Number 1 says, many people think Japan never had castles before. And if you will think about this sentence, you will realize it is a declarative sentence. And a declarative sentence gets a period at the end. It is telling us that many people thought that there were never castles in Japan before. We're going to learn otherwise in these other sentences. But the first sentence is declarative. By the way, just for a little extra review too, let's think about the subject and the verb in this sentence. Look for the verb first. That usually helps find the subject a little easier. Many people think. Think is the verb. It is an action verb. We use our brains to think. Once we have that verb, it's a little easier to find the subject. Who does the thinking, everybody? Yep, you're right. The people think. So that is your subject. So number 1 is a declarative sentence. Back to your page 277 at the top. Let's go right next to it to the second box that says a sentence that asks a question is also called an interrogative sentence. We talked about that earlier this year. We talked about a investigator questioning a witness for information, and that we use the word that they would interrogate them. To interrogate means to ask, to get information. So an interrogative sentence kind of goes along with that and is the word that we use for a sentence that asks a question. And of course, an interrogative sentence ends with a question mark. All right. There on your page 277 in that first section, we're going to look at sentence number 3 now. We're going to skip number 2 and go on to number 3. Let's read it together. Why did they build castles in Japan? Well, in reading that sentence, it's pretty easy to figure out that that's asking a question. Okay, why? Why is a questioning word along with who, where, what, and when. All right, so let's go ahead and put our question mark at the end of that sentence, telling us that that is an interrogative sentence. All right, again, let's take a moment to find our subject and verb. Why did they build castles in Japan? The verb is an action verb. It is the word build. Okay, and so we'll underline that twice. And then once you know what the verb is, it's a little easier to figure out who's doing the building, and it is a pronoun. They is your subject. All right, so that's an example of an interrogative sentence. All right, back to our books at the top section. The third box there says a sentence that makes a command or a request is also called an imperative sentence. It ends with a period. This one is a little less familiar because I don't think before this year in 3rd grade that you talked about this in 2nd grade, if I remember correctly. But these kind of sentences are pretty easy to tell too, especially for you because you guys are used to hearing quite a few imperative sentences from your moms or dads or maybe grandma asking you or telling you to do something. All right, and let's look at example number 4. Number 4 on your workbook page and on the board here says, go to the library to find out. That sentence is telling someone to do something. In fact, we talked about earlier this year that in a sentence like that, your subject is considered to be an understood you, okay? If you were to read that sentence and then in your mind think, okay, let me put the word you in front of it. You go to the library to find out. Somebody is telling you to do something, therefore it is an imperative sentence. And an imperative sentence always gets a period at the end, okay? Just like a declarative sentence, it's the same punctuation, but it's actually called an imperative sentence. You could even put your own name in front of that. Let's say we were talking about Devin. Devin, you could say, Devin, go to the library to find out. That would be somebody giving him a command or a request to go to the library to find out. The verb in that sentence would be go. And the subject, again, is what I would tell you is called understood. I'm not going to go into big detail with that. You'll learn more about that in 4th grade and on up. But for now, just know that an imperative sentence gives a command or a request and ends with a period. All right, back to our book one more time. Doing a great job. Thanks for listening. Number 4. An exclamation is a sentence that shows excitement or strong feeling. It is also called an exclamatory sentence. It ends with an exclamation point, or some people refer to it as an exclamation mark. I'm going to move my camera a little bit here so we can look down and see this next sentence that's on the board. If I can get my little thing to adjust. There we go. All right. This, again, is from page 277. And this is number 7 on that page. Let's read it together. It says, what beautiful castles they are. You can maybe pretend for a minute that you're in Japan touring these castles, and you might say to your mom or dad or brother or sister, what beautiful castles they are. That shows strong feeling or excitement. And so at the end of an exclamatory sentence, we're going to put an exclamation point. Right? And looking at the subject and verb of this, what beautiful what beautiful castles they are. This is one of those weird sentences where the subject and verb are really more towards the end of the sentence. In fact, the verb is the very last word of the sentence. It's the word are, okay? And the subject would be the pronoun they. But again, what I want you to remember most about that is an exclamatory sentence showing strong feeling or excitement about the beautiful castles they saw in Japan. So I hope this helps you as you go to work on these pages. Later on this week, we'll have a quiz that has this information on it. And on Tuesday, when we have our Google Meet, if you have any questions about this, you can ask then. But I think you guys are going to do great and remember really well what we learned earlier this year. Thanks, boys and girls.